Mayor, it's good to see you again.
Jason, thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming back in. Last weekend, the first Democratic debate for the Democratic race for Texas Attorney General. You came out blazing against your opponent. This is not the Joe Jaworski I remember from 4 years ago.
Well, you know, I have grown as a candidate, and each race is different. Senator Nathan Johnson is a different opponent than Rochelle Garza. Nathan, I punched hard because his record is punch-worthy, and in a Democratic primary, that's the tone I wanted to set early on, and it's going to continue.
On what issues do you differ most from Senator Johnson?
Well, I think that I can give you specific issues like I did at the debate. The fact that he would acquit Ken Paxton on 2 very serious charges. The fact that he would side with the MAGA agenda to suppress free speech on all our campuses and be one of the 2 Democrats who voted with all Republicans for the Campus Security Act, which, thank God, was found unconstitutional by a Reagan judge. And finally, being one of the votes on the Democratic side to put Proposition 16 on the ballot last week, which clarified that you had to be a United States citizen in order to vote in Texas. Well, we already knew that. So my question is, if you're a senator trying to elevate to the Attorney General's office, why are you voting for this MAGA agenda when what Texas needs is a fighter?
You ran in 2022 when we first met. You didn't make it out of the primary then. Well, what has really changed in your campaign besides the tone and being on the offense, though?
Well, certainly 4 years later, I have had a chance to exercise my voice. Jason, as you know, I've written op-eds in all the major newspapers since 22, expressing my concerns about government, talking about how reform is needed. Trump gets elected. Then I had a radio show in Houston where I had all the major thought leaders in the Democratic Party, from media to candidates. And then I announced in July, the difference is America is different. Texas is different. We can't survive another term of Greg Abbott or Ken Paxton's successor. And I think what we need right now are people who are about economics, education, freedom of speech, and the Republican Party is not that. So I don't see myself right now as an attorney general that needs to reach across a barbed wire aisle. There's no hand extended on the other side anyway, Jason. What I want to do is be an attorney general that brings back the Bill of Rights as it existed when it was passed to Texas.
You said the AG's office needs reforms after the recent scandals down there with General Paxton. What's one reform you would enact in your first 100 days?
I would like to reform the child support collection process. Ken Paxton has starved that essential duty, which has been awarded to the Attorney General's office exclusively. And now we have so many single parents, mainly women, but sometimes men, who are being starved in the process, and their children demand help. Ken Paxton has wasted resource after resource, countless dollars, on frivolous culture war lawsuits, like the one he filed against the Galveston Independent School District just late last week, which will cost taxpayers dollars to defend his assault based on something about hanging the 10 Commandments in a classroom. Meantime, children need support. So that will be the #1 focus. The other will be reversing several of his unpopular lawsuits. Let me just give you one.
Yeah, such as what?
The collusion that he and Pam Bondi did to render the Texas Dream Act dead in the water. This is a great educational policy that for the last 20 years plus, even a Republican legislature has approved every 2 years because someone always tries to attack it. Just the 89th legislature, Jason, they approved it again, and a month later, Ken Paxton and Pam Bondi agree on a lawsuit. Paxton didn't even answer the lawsuit. He signed off on it. I will reverse that on day 1.
If elected, would you investigate Attorney General Paxton's actions?
Absolutely. In fact, I think what would be appropriate would be upon election night next year, November 3rd, when we wake up the next day with a Democrat Attorney General-elect, we should send him a notice, whether it's in the form of some sort of legal process or not, to don't destroy any documents like you did during your impeachment. No dumpsters, no fires. Keep all the documents because we're coming into the office in about 60 days.
Is that serious, though? Would you actually investigate him?
Well, I think you have to. And certainly the question is, will the whistleblower judgment be paid? Ken Paxton now has cost taxpayers a judgment of close to $7 million. You remember he tried to settle it for 3.3 and then backed off paying it, saying, well, get your money from the legislature. So Ken Paxton has made great mistakes. We'll see what his status is in the primary in March, whether he elevates to be a nominee for U.S. Senate or not. But the Attorney General's office is not going to forget what he did.
Some people watching this say, hey, listen, you were mayor of Galveston. What do you know about being the Attorney General for the state?
Well, what's interesting is the mayor in Galveston certainly is a member of the city council, but on the singular signal question that defined my 2-year term, that of rebuilding public housing and urban development under the government code look to the mayor and the mayor alone, because he is the highest elected official in the jurisdiction. Yeah. So I had a lot of executive authority dealing with the rebuilding of public housing. Also, remember, the Attorney General is a lawyer, and I am a third-generation Texas lawyer, like my dad, Joseph, and my grandfather, Leon, who prosecuted World War II Nazis and the President of the United States.
And Watergate.
And Watergate.
Yeah.
And being a Texas lawyer for 35 years gives you some chops on how you might operate the Attorney General's office.
You've emphasized taking on corruption on your campaign website in this interview as well, too, but are there specific anti-corruption initiatives that you would pursue if elected?
Yes, I think a lot of the corruption comes from the delivery of money or pay to play. And everybody says, look, we put our donors on the list, but did we ever really find out what Dan Patrick did with that $2 million, quote, forgivable, unquote, loan 6 weeks before calling the first witness in Ken Paxton's impeachment trial? I mean, that was separate and aside from the $1 million he got as a contribution. So I think that there needs to be an investigation, an inspection, a deeper inspection of the money that's traveling hand to hand in Austin. I know we have certain safeguards like blackout periods and all that, but the reality is there is way too much money awash, and that decides exactly whether we're going to have vouchers or not, or whether we're going to have a jury of 31 versus 30 in an impeachment trial. Jason, it makes a big difference.
So isn't that something that should be done legislatively, though, as far as ethics reforms go?
Well, certainly I think investigations from a neutral executive like the Attorney General, and it can't be seen as overtly political, by the way. So what's good for Republicans is good for Democrats. And I would say that carries through behavior, both personal and political and professional. So the Attorney General ought to lead by example, and I hope the legislature takes the hint and starts reforming these ethics laws.
In the past few years, the Attorney General's office has been mired in politics, as far as it seems like the AG is doing political bidding and filing lawsuits based on where things are politically. Would you do the same thing on the Democratic side?
You can't, because...
Why couldn't you? He's shown you can on the right.
Right. Two wrongs don't make a right. And what I want is 4 years to try and correct course. I want people who might call themselves Republican, might call themselves Democrat, or the great majority who call themselves independent, see leadership in this office, fairness in this office, going back to basics: child support, Attorney General opinions, bond approvals, open records, and let it be right down the line. And what I can tell people is, on open records, assume Joe Jaworski will be for the release of the records unless an exemption or an exception directly applies. I mean, that's the kind of policy people ought to be able to expect from the highest lawyer in the state.
You talked about using the office for consumer protectionism also, in addition to child support. You've also talked about using it for, after disasters. Even after, not just hurricanes, but after what happened in Uvalde, after what happened on the river with Camp Mystic and other places like that. How would you use the office? Who would you go after in these situations? Would it be utilities? Who would it be?
Well, what's interesting is, I like how you said going after, because that is how we think of lawyers. This is going to be your prosecutor, or in Ken Paxton's case, your persecutor. But the Attorney General's office can also be an advice, a counsel. For example, going back to something I said earlier, child support. It doesn't have to be just the collection of the money and we're suing you, now give us the money, we're giving it to the conservator parent. It can also be a wraparound social services. I mean, we have offices all over the state, so we can help people. in a disaster, the example that you just brought up, why can't the Attorney General be there in a support position as well as a legal advice position?
Democratic voters will first see you on the ballot against Nathan Johnson. Tony Box is also on the ballot. What's your pitch to voters, to Democratic voters, on why they should check your box and not Nathan Johnson or Tony Box's?
That's right. Yeah, vote for Joe Jaworski, because I am the fighter that Texas needs right now. And it's not just Democrats versus Republican. It is Joe Jaworski, who has no agenda for advancement or politics as usual. I see that government can actually soothe a savage civilization. I mean, I think that's what the Greeks said, and Robert F. Kennedy famously quoted this the night that King was shot, and he extemporaneously spoke in Indianapolis. Government should be here to ease the pain and suffering of people and to give people a leg up. Exercise your freedoms. Joe Jaworski, as Attorney General, is going to fight for your personal rights. I will be your lawyer, not the corporations exclusively.
You know, people might say, well, listen, Nathan Johnson says the same thing. I want to ask again, how are you most different from Nathan Johnson? I mean, you're both attorneys. You both have experience.
Right. I think Mr. Johnson has shown through his record that he is more about advancing his personal agenda. I don't know why he is running for Attorney General right now, other than to say, hey, look, I can work with both sides. And his record shows that, unfortunately, it's more about sort of personally accommodating Dan Patrick and MAGA's vision in the Republican-led Senate. I think that his attorney career is second to mine as well. I don't know that he has near the litigation experience, and he certainly hasn't had any executive experience like I had as mayor in the housing issue. But I would ask people to listen carefully to our debates and research Mr. Johnson's record in the Senate. I think the Democrats will pick Joe Jaworski. They'll pick me because I am the fighter and I am the true Democrat in this race.
Where do you stand on the death penalty?
I'm very suspect of it. I think that there have been enough occasions where actual innocence got proven, and thank God often before death. I would like the legislature, I mean, it's not my job to remove it or approve it. It's the law right now, but I would like the legislature to take another look at that and consider an alternative to the death penalty, like so many other states have done.
Two last questions here. I want one-sentence responses on these. Why should a swing voter consider you over a Republican opponent if you're the nominee?
Because the Republicans have damaged Texas's notion of fairness that have led us for over 200 years. It's time for balance.
And last question, why should a progressive primary voter pick you over another Democrat?
Because my agenda is pure, and I know I can fight, and for a progressive agenda to survive right now in this environment, you need a fighter to fight for it.
Mayor, it's good to see you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Jason.